Great, so now we're recording. Sorry, this is the second time I've recorded something, so.
That's okay. Are you? I know I did actually when we went remote last year, or earlier in the year, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going to just introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask you to introduce you, and then we can go through the questions that I think you've had. Okay. So hi, my name is Sascha Bretzger, and I'm in the class of 2023 at Wellesley College, and I'm a student visitor assistant at the Davis Museum. I'm here today speaking with Andrew Mowbray, lecturer in art and director of 3D arts at Wellesley College, about his contributions to the Q20 showcase. Thank you so much for being here and speaking with me. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Andy Mowbray, and I am a lecturer in the art department and co-director of architecture and director of 3D arts. So Sascha, thank you for meeting with me today. I'd also like to thank the Davis Museum too, just for putting together this wonderful faculty show. I know a lot of people had their own work that they brought in, but the curation of it made it really special in the layout too. So thumbs up to the Davis Museum. Thank you.
Great. So my first question is, what did you learn as an undergrad that still influences your artistic practice today?
I would say hard work, just really hard work and not giving up. In the understanding that sometimes things don't work out, but working through them, the process of doing that actually can lead to something something wonderful. And also just being really open-minded to things. I think trying to just stay open-minded to materials and processes and accidents that happen that all of a sudden could turn into a whole nother body of work or some other idea. So yeah.
Fantastic. How does your teaching influence your art and vice versa?
I think that's a really good question, because I think when I first started teaching years and years and years ago, they were kind of separate things, but running parallel tracks. One would sort of help the other in certain ways, and I would show the students my work. But it was a few years ago that I started working more with the design and architecture students and told them to start looking at something simple or more essential and not looking at these monumental famous architects that are out there and their work, but instead taking it down to something essential. And then I realized I needed to do that with my own work and really build that up from the ground up. So there was probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, there was kind of a reset and a change in my work.
Fantastic. So the third question I have is the Davis mounts a faculty exhibition every 5 years. How did you decide on what to include in Q20?
It was interesting because for me, I had been working on this project in my studio. It was set to go to another exhibition, and then they added more people into this group exhibition. So they wanted something a little bit smaller, and the main piece in the faculty exhibition is a triptych. And they were like, oh, can we just show 2 of the panels? Which I was like, no, you can't. That makes no sense. So I was a little upset that they even asked for that. But so I put a separate piece in that show. And so it had been sitting in my my studio, and I was like, this is the piece that I'm going to show. There was really no questions in I feel like it held up in the Davis space too, which is a kind of large, vast space. And I was happy that it didn't turn into a postage stamp once that I got it out of my small studio and into the actual gallery. So it was rewarding to see it up with a fair amount of space around it.
Yeah, personally, I was a visitor assistant, so I was in the gallery with these pieces, and I did think that even though it was it's a very large, that was a really fantastic way of fitting in, and that it really popped there, even though it definitely didn't turn into a postage stamp. So the next question is, what have you learned from your students?
Oh, that's a really good question. Wow. And no, I don't know if anyone's ever asked me this. I mean, on a daily basis, just so much. I'm trying to think of like an overarching principle that I've learned from them.
Mhm.
Um, I've learned to be flexible, especially over the past few years. The students come in and they're there for 4 years, where I've been here for, I'm almost at 20 years now. So I've kind of seen this change around the school, and I really appreciate the students that are at Wellesley College right now. I
Mhm.
just feel like they're politically active and aware, and they've questioned me on some of like my beliefs and thoughts. And they've changed my mind, which is absolutely amazing. And so I feel, I'm older now, but I feel like more open to suggestions from the students. And it's simple things like I had strong feelings about shadow grading, and the students we had a conversation about it and they changed my opinion on that. So yeah, I think I don't know, it's sort of a daily learning that I have with the students. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Um, the last question I have is, what are you working on now?
So, um, well, during quarantine, I did not get a lot done, but it was also I just didn't have the sort of energy or mental capacity to get a lot of work done.
Mhm.
I made one or two smaller pieces. Um, so I've been working the same as everybody else, just on life and figuring things out and preparing for school and this new, going from semesters to terms. So a lot of it I've been working on how to teach during this time. But I do have, in the spring, I have an exhibition coming up, a solo exhibition in residency at the Fruitlands Museum. And so that I haven't made anything tangible, but I'm working out my ideas for that. So one thing I did work on over the summer is I'm an avid gardener, and I saved seeds from my garden for the project at the Fruitlands Museum.
Mhm.
The Shaker community that was part of that area, which they have a collection of shaker objects and paraphernalia and a little shaker house. They were major seed producers. So I think right now is like a time everybody sort of went remote and went into quarantine, and people wanted to start these almost like victory gardens and like be able to provide for themselves. So, and I did a little of that, but also I think seeds are sort of back on the radar and saving seeds. So for the exhibition at the Fruitlands Museum, I will have a seed exchange set up in their visitor center. And then I will also be making some of my own objects based on shaker objects. And those will be kind of inserted into the collection at the museum. So
That's fantastic. Um, this is just another question I have. Do you find that you often create works that are based on a specific concept? Like you're referencing the shakers here. Do you think that's something that you do often, or is that a newer experience for you? If that
I
makes
usually like to reference something, and I often think about objects and how they're used and their functionality, and also who uses them. And also who, if they're for sale, like who buys those and where do they end up? Are they commodities or are they not commodities? And the objects are referencing, like, I like these milk crate forms because they're extremely functional. They all work together and they're kind of ubiquitous. And generally when they're used, it's not like they're used by kings and queens and castles. They're used by everyday people, students moving books, people using them as a seat, workmen putting tools in them. So I like those objects because the baggage that they carry is something that is simple, and it's open to everyone. So it could be as simple as something like that. With the Fruitlands Museum, they have pre-existing collections up there. So they have a collection of paintings that are kind of in the Hudson River era. So things like Bierstadt and those types of painters at the turn of the century. Then they have the Alcott, Bronson Alcott house. And the Alcott family did their sort of utopian 1 year off the grid and lived out there and tried to live off the land. And it wasn't very successful, but some of that shows up in Little Women. And they have a huge collection of Louisa May Alcott's objects. They have a diary from when she was 9 and locks of the girl's hair. So that was tempting to like do something with that collection. I'm happy I didn't, because the movie came out after I had already like after I decided to do this up there. So I think there's enough people interested in covering that. But the shaker sort of ideals and their objects and the craft element just really felt right to me. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Professor Mowbray. That's all the questions I have. And thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Great. Sascha, thank you so much. Yeah, this was really, really great. So
Great.
thanks.
I'm gonna